In this video, we're going to look at load shedding in South Africa. Just how bad is the situation, what our government's going to do about it, and what you can do about it. My name is Neil Forster from Power in the Box, and we do renewable energy for the household, for the factory, for the office, for the farm, and even a town. So when I looked at this graph, I was reading a business tech article the other day, and I saw this graph, and they call it the accumulated blackout time in South Africa. And it looked just like a run chase. You know, I'm a cricket fan and I watch an ODI, One Day International, and what they do is that when the first team bats, they plot their score and the runs for every over the 50 overs. And then the next team comes in and they bat against it. And you normally see, it often looks a bit like these two here, where they call them the worms, where you can see just how one team is doing against the other team. Let's look at the run chase, and this is the accumulated blackout time in South Africa for the year of 2020, 2021, 2022 and 23. So starting at 2020, because you've got to look at a bit of history, and you can see that it didn't do much, but we had an accumulated 5.2 days of blackout in this country for the whole year. The next year, we got 7.2. Now, on this graph, it looks like they're very close together, but actually that's a 40% increase. It's about a 42% increase. So actually the writing was on the wall that in 2021, we were blacked out for 42% more than the previous year. But that's not all. Then let's look at last year. Now, last year, look at the run chase for last year. we round about March or April, it equaled the previous year, and by the time we got to the end of the year, we had 34.6 days of blackout in this country. When we look at 2022 compared to 2021, we see that 34.6 days from 7.2, that's about 4.6 times. So that's nearly 500% increase between one year and the next. And this is where it really gets interesting. When I compare the run chase of last year with this year, by the 9th of May, we had already equaled last year's 34.6. So in other words, if we were watching cricket, what we would say is that they reached the opposition's target with 30 overs to spare. And what this means for us is that if you had to project where we're going to end by the end of the year, we're off the charts. We've got a real problem. So let's see what the government is doing about it. The only thing I've seen the government do in the last year or so about our electricity problem is appoint an electricity minister. Now, heaven only knows what his salary is going to cost, plus his ministry and all his staff and all his travel. And apart from media appearances and a lot of talk and asking us to please use electricity, I see only one thing that he's actually done that's positive. And that is recently he secured 100 megawatts of electricity from Mozambique. Now, to put that in perspective, 100 megawatts is 0.1 of a gigawatt. And since we are about 4 or 5 gigawatts shy every single day, that 0.1 is not going to make too much difference. It's a bit like going to your neighbor and borrowing a cup of sugar. Yes, it's going to help you bake that cake, but it's not going to last a month. And our minister has gone to our neighbors and he's borrowed a cup of sugar. And there's a big press conference and photographs of him shaking his counterpart's hand. Eskom themselves haven't done an awful lot. We have about 55 gigawatts capacity, that's maximum. But since only half the equipment is working, they're generating, their capacity, published capacity is about 28 gigawatts is what they can generally supply. And they technically should be able to supply 50 odd, and they are supplying 28, and we're normally using more than that. So that's why we have to load shed. I read an article recently that the effective capacity of Eskom at the moment is 3 gigawatts less than it was the same time last year. So actually in the last year, their capacity, what they can give us, is actually reduced by 10%. It's about 10% reduction. So that's why the lights are off. And that's why the lights are going to carry on staying off and being switched off for a long time to come, because there doesn't seem to be a concrete solution by either Eskom or government. I did a video recently where I showed you that our new acting CEO for Eskom is losing sleep over the fact that we could tip into stage 8 load shedding at any moment. He just needs 1 or 2 generating systems to go down, and bang, we're right there, because we're right on the limit. So what can we do about it? You know, do we stand on our soapboxes, like I say so often, and point fingers at government and point fingers at Eskom? And yes, it's understandable that you might want to do that, but when it comes down to it, as a homeowner, you've got to keep your home running. You might have children at school who have to study. You need to keep your fridge running. If you're a businessman, you need to keep the lights on and the computers running. You need to keep your Wi-Fi going. And all these things use electricity. And we can sit around here pointing fingers at government and Eskom and waiting and waiting and waiting. But actually, in truth South African form, we mark a plan. So, and we've got a couple of plans. Overwhelming. What do I do? Where do I start? How much does it cost? You go into the shops and you see inverters all over the place, these boxes, you don't know what's in them, what's on them, how long it'll run, and you have shop assistants who don't really know what they're talking about. I've heard some really interesting comments made by shop assistants by saying that inverter is good for stage 3 and that one's good for stage 6, with no indication of how much power you're going to draw. So it's a fairly new industry, it's a new problem, and I found that the average South African finds it very hard to try and establish exactly what it is you need and how we're going to solve the problem. So we've got a 6-stage solution. Step 1 is to secure your connectivity. Connectivity to the internet, and to make sure that your computers stay up and running through the load shedding events, so that your children, if they're at university or school, can do their after work studies. And if you are working from home, as many of us are now since COVID, we're working from home. Even if we have a job, we're working from home. You need to keep your computer up and running. And if you're running a business from home, you need to keep your computers running. So that is step 1. Step 1 is a simple matter of getting an inverter that is correctly sized, and you need to do a power audit of exactly what you want, just to run a home office or to keep a student up and running. The next step after our step 1 is just to secure your connectivity for load shedding events. The next step is to secure your load, that same capacity, but during an extended blackout. In other words, what we're experiencing in South Africa so often, that the lights go off for load shedding and they don't come back on again, because some switchgear somewhere, which is not designed to be switched on and off all day, eventually goes, and you end up being off without power for 2-3 days at a time. Now, what you're going to do then? So the next step up from just a plain little inverter in your home, a little power in the box inverter at home, is to add solar panels to that. Now you can get 1 or 2 200-watt solar panels that'll normally do the trick. You can literally stand them up in your garden or on your against your garden furniture, point them at the sun, plug them into your inverter, and that'll power your office during the day, and it'll fill up your batteries, so at night, after the sun goes down, you've got another 4 or 5 hours worth of connectivity. That's our step 2. Step 3 is to install an inverter and a lithium battery into your distribution board at home. The benefit of that is that when you're walking around at home, you switch on the lights and the lights work. Such a relief. You know, just walking into a room and hitting the lights, you won't even notice that you're being load shed. As long as your battery capacity is measured is correctly sized for your home. And at this point, I would suggest that you don't connect your stoves and your heaters and your geyser to this inverter. This is an inverter to just keep your small appliances running, even a vacuum cleaner or a kettle, and a microwave, and all of your lights in your house, and obviously your Wi-Fi and your computers and so on. And this will make life feel normal again. And these solutions start at about 60,000-70,000 rand, where you have an inverter installed into your distribution board. No solar at this point, this is the entry level, and your life goes on pretty much as normal. So when the power's on, it charges your batteries, and when the power's off, your batteries supply electricity to your household. To give you an idea, a small household will consume about 300 or 400 watts of electricity. In other words, that's to power your fridge, your freezer, couple of small appliances, on average about 400 watts. And if you say you want to power your house for 10 hours at 400 watts, that's 4,000 watt hours, in other words 4 kilowatt hours. And therefore what you do is you go and solve that problem by buying a 5 kilowatt hour battery, lithium battery. A 5 kilowatt hour lithium battery will easily supply your 4 kilowatt hours of power for to keep your house connected for a full 10 hours. So that will take you through most load shedding events. Our next step, step 4, is to take that same inverter and add solar to it. So if you add, say, 8 solar panels, 8 550 watt panels will provide about 3,000 watts for 6 hours of the day. That brings our calculations back to about 18 kilowatt hours per day that you can get from solar. If you have a system like that in your house, you will probably not notice load shedding. That's exactly what I've got in my house. So I'm producing about 15 to 18 kilowatt hours a day, and that's enough to run my household and keep my batteries topped up. And on a normal day, I don't experience load shedding. But at this point, I want to point out a really critical item here, and that is your biggest consumer of electricity in your house is typically your geyser. Now, a geyser uses 3 kilowatts. So if you're running a geyser for 4 hours a day, that's already 4 times 3,000, 4 times 3, it's 12 kilowatt hours a day just for your geyser. So you literally need 6 panels just to keep your geyser going. In other words, you're just running your household essentials, microwave kettles, your small appliances, your computers, your Wi-Fi connectivity, but your geyser is tied to the grid. So in other words, when the grid is up, when Eskom is supplying electricity, use that time to charge up your geyser, get your geyser hot. And then when the power is off, well, the geyser behaves like a water battery, hot water battery. This takes us to stage 5. Now, stage 5 is where you take your geyser, which uses about 3 or 4 kilowatts, and typically your geyser will take about 3 hours. So 12 kilowatt hours just to heat up a geyser full of water. But if you install a heat pump, now a heat pump is like an air conditioner that works backwards. An air conditioner takes the heat out of your house and pumps it outside. It actually exchanges it. What a heat pump does is it takes the heat from outside and it pumps it through your geyser, through your existing geyser, and heats up your water. So you're doing it the other way. You're taking heat from outside and you are using it to heat your geyser. And it's a far more efficient system, and it only uses about 1 kilowatt to heat your geyser and 1 kilowatt for about 3 hours. So you're using 3 kilowatt hours a day for heating water if you've got a heat pump, compared to about 9 or 10 if you're using a normal geyser. So heat pumps start at about 20, 25, 30,000 Rand mark to have one installed. Then if you have a heat pump, you only have to set aside 3 kilowatt hours a day of your solar generation to heat your water, and the rest can run your household. Then we get to stage 6. And stage 6 is what I call completely off the grid. In other words, you can literally unplug from your city power connection and sustain yourself. And actually, to be completely off the grid is somewhat unrealistic. I don't think it's worth it in terms of how much it costs you. But let me tell you what it really would require. You'd require, I would imagine, at least 20 solar panels on your roof. And you'd need at least 10 to 15 kilowatt hours of lithium battery. That'll keep you going for a couple of days, maybe. What happens when you have 2 weeks of rain or rainy weather? Or you live in a place in South Africa where that's quite common. Then you're going to find that solar's not going to do it for you, and then what you do is you have to add a generator. If you go 2 or 3 days of rainy weather, you use your generator to supply your needs. And again, your generator's got to be sized correctly with your batteries and with your system. So getting completely off the grid is possible. It's 250,000 Rand plus for a small home. I'd say it's closer to 300,000, but most people don't need to. You know, where there is power, even if we had stage 8 load shedding, there's still power for half the day, and there's more than enough time to top up your batteries. So I hope this video has helped you, and if you want more detail, then come to our website and we show you how to do a power audit for your house to see exactly how much you need and give you an indication of various solutions that can help you along the way. You can move through all 6 stages as your checkbook allows it, or you can jump straight to stage 4 or 5, whatever. But if you come to our website, you'll see the various options, and then as a household, you can sit down and plan it, and then contact us. You're welcome to contact us. We offer a free power audit where we look at your particular situation and what your needs are, and propose certain solutions for you. Please subscribe to our channel. If power generation, renewable energy, getting off the grid is all part of where you're thinking at the moment, subscribe to our channel so that every time we offer videos like this, you'll be notified.